When I say value type, it will not store this, what are the values you are assigning, it will not store the memory. If I assign a value, it will store the particular value. So how to define the enumeration? Like class, when I'm defining, I'm giving a class keyword. For the structure, I'm giving a struct keyword. The same way, if I want to define enumeration, I'll define my enumeration with a enum keyword and following by with what name you want to give. So first, what is the job this? When I want to store some group of related values. Why I want to store some group of related values in enumeration only. So this, if suppose I have a xyz values, if I want to store x, y, z values, I can create three different variables: variable x, variable y, and a variable z. Instead of that, if these three are related, suppose coordinates are there, directions are there, weekdays, weekends, months. So all are possible values. If I declare this xyz in my sample enum, in the future, I don't need to go to the XYZ. Just call your enumeration, it will give all the related values. So I can define here the values by placing my case keyword. Okay. Case, how you want to define? Case X, case Y, and a case Z. In future, if you want to get a X value, you just refer to enumeration name and you get a value. Now, in what scenarios I will find whether it is a group of related values or not. So in the general, in a real time, to store our custom errors or some notifications, some set of values. So usually these cases we use enumeration and we will store the values. Now I'll define some directions. If I want to store this in variables, so if I store an enumeration, apart from these four, I don't have any extra direction. So these are nothing but related to your directions. So I'll define my enumeration as direction and your values, what you want to store. If I want to store this in some variable, the same way, first create your enumeration variable or instance, reference, anything. So instance, I want to create for my enumeration. My direction and what value you want to store here. So here you don't need to initialize any direction, and here what value you want to store. Now my direction value I want to store as a west. I'll store this. So in this variable, now the value will be the west value. If I want to update this value, next, with which value want to update. So like this, I can take the values. If I want to define a variable, so every time I should remember my variable name. For west what I'm giving, for south what I'm giving, all the scenarios. So instead of that, I'll define my variable as a enumeration, and in the enumeration I can define all the cases. So there is one more useful for this. When I want to check for the condition, when I want to check for these conditions, I want to check some value. Suppose I have stored my value as a south now. Now I'll check for the switch case. Which value? Now what is the current direction? Now instead of this, I'll take this as a current direction. So what is your current direction? In a real time, if I define inside the variables, so here in the case, I have to write my each variable name. So what are the variables you are defining for the directions? And in each case, I have to define my variables. Now, if I want to check for this variable from my enum I'm defining, so the cases I can define from my enum directly. So my cases, check for east, So write your queries here, because in the switch, when we discussed about switch also we will use to see the possible values. When I have a possible values, instead of writing if else cases, you directly write a switch case. Now here, these are the possible values that I can get for the direction. Apart from these four, I don't have any extra values. If you want to write any extra value, you can define one more case and you write the value what you want to write. This is a simple enum. So here also it is a value type. Why I'm telling it is a value type? Now I have a current direction. In my current direction, I have a source value. I'll take one more direction. In this, I'm storing my current direction value. So in one more direction, just now I have assigned whatever there in the current direction. In the current direction, here I have assigned a value called south. The same value will be copied here. So it will not store for the, it will not check for any memory. It will not check for any reference. So if I am assigning some value, it will store the same value. Now, in both the cases, in one more direction and the current direction, I have a source value. Now I'll update my current direction value to something else. To east. Now I'll check. After immediately assigning, both are having the same values. Now my current direction changed to the east. But still in one more direction, what was the previous value that I have assigned? It will have the same value. It will never have a latest value. But in my current direction, just now I have assigned a new value called east. It will have a value. So this kind of scenarios we call as a value types. So not only here, wherever you see this kind of scenarios, if two variables assign each other, and if I update one value in one variable, not reflected in the another variable. So this kind of types we call as a value types. So structures, enumerations are the value types. Only classes, as of now, what we have seen, classes is the reference types. Yes. So number of cases, it's if what kind of values you want to store, for each value you have to write a case and then store the value. So class is a reference type here, and we have one more concept called closures. Closures we'll see later. Closure is also a reference type. So this is the simple enumeration, how we define, how we store the values. So any notes are there in this? Okay. So now the enums, whatever I'm defining, the enums can be defined into two different things. Raw enums and the associated enums. So what is the difference between a raw enum and a associated enum? When I'm defining a enum, I'm just defining my enum name and I'm not telling any data type for this. So when I say here we are storing only the variables. Usually when we are defining a variable here, a variable can have any data type. Here I'm not defining any data type. If my requirement, I want to define a data type. Then think for each case. If I have 10 cases, I want to give same data type for the 10 cases. Now I have 3 cases. I want to give same data type. How I pass the same data type means to the enumeration. When you're defining enumeration type, I can say either I want it to be a string, or I want it to be integer, or double, or bool, or array. So anything I can define here. So this kind of enums, all the cases, all the values which is having the same data type, this kind of enums we call as a raw enums. Now this enumeration I'm defining as an integer enumeration. Suppose if I try to update some string value for this, it will immediately say the enum you have declared is a raw enum and you cannot assign a string value to the raw type integer value. So here I can assign only the integer values. Something like this, 1, 2, 3. So only the integer values I can assign here. This is about the raw enums. And we have a associated enums. In associated enums, it's just opposite to the raw enum. So here everything have the same data type. Here this enumeration won't have any data type. If I'm defining my case can be anything. So case 1, I can define as integer. Case 2, I have defined as a string. Case 3, I define as an integer and the string. So here each case have its own individual data type. This kind of enums we call as a associated enums, but in the real time we may not use associated enums. So wherever you use, you have to definitely use raw enums only. So this kind of enums also not allowed, because here I am not telling any value for this. If I want to store some value in this variable, I cannot store any value here. So what are the enum you define it as a raw enum and assign some data type for this. Now here there is one more thing that we can do. When I'm having a values here, for each value I'm defining a case. So the enum can be defined in another way. If you want to define each case with a value, you define, or in a single case, we can define all the values, but should be separated by the comma. So now this is one case, second case, third case, and the fourth case. Like this also you can define the enumeration, but in real time just follow this scenario. So according to the coding guidelines, you have to define each case for each variable, each value what you are storing. If I want to access this, the same way you can access by telling your enumeration name and using the dot syntax access your variable what you are defining. So this is how we can use the enumerations. And in error handling scenario, we see a real example for this, a real-time example. We have error handling concept. So there we will see how the enum will be helpful. Any doubts in this? In a real lab, suppose in our project what we are using is I want to define my server type. So in a real time, server can be a development server, can be a staging server, can be a production server. So what I'll define is enumeration. I'll define server type. I'll define. So here, instead of defining my server type, for this I'll assign some value. So I'll say if the value comes 0, I'll think it is a development server, because every time I cannot check sandbox, production, or staging. So 1 is a staging, 2 is a production. Now these are the related values. Apart from this, I don't have any server in my environment. So how I'll define this means, first case I'll define as a dev server. So here I want to define as a raw type to store 0, 1, 2. So I'll define this is a integer type. So here I'll assign 0 value for my development server. Now I'll check if server type is 0. Now how I can check which server I am using? First, so here I'll delete this. I'll write every time I'll have one global variable. So which server I am running in. So I'll take one global variable. My current server, from server type production. Now I'm checking for the production server. So here I'll let a switch case to use my parameters. If production, I want to pass different parameters, different tokens, different API keys. If it is a development server, different. If it is a staging, it is a different. Just check. So what kind of server now it is. And if you want to check what is your device type, if I want to run in iOS, so here I'll check whether I'm running an iPhone or iPad. Two cases I'll define. One is for iPhone, one is for iPad. So my case will identify which server I have running, but how my program identifies that server is running. This case goes through the cases, right? So whenever I want to run from this, I'll take the variable. So if I don't have enum also, a variable I have to take. So the variable I have to update the value. Instead of taking a separate variable, I'm defining in one simple structure here. So I'll define one simple structure here. Instead of defining a structure, I'm going for a enum. So this will be one separate thing. So sometimes there will be two bits, right? Yes. For one for staging and one for correct. So the developer, they give us two bits. Yes. So basically they correct. So it's possible that programmatically in my program only I can change that build in a same single build only using. No, that you may. So in that case, what you will do in a property list, you define one variable. So development type. So here take some value. So every time you have to update this value. So in my case also here we'll add one row. So my one row I'll add. So my program will first check from here, then go inside. Yes. Right? Yes. Then it finds that actually, I was asking how my program finds that I am on which server. Yes. So my program will be coming from the info.plist file. From there. No. That we have to check manually every time. Your application will not tell you which server you want to run. So every time, whenever I'm launching the application, I have to check. So from the P list, I will check. I will pick that variable. So what is the development type? So here, my key is dev type, and the value I'm passing it dev. So from here, I build it. If this is the case, my server will be a development server. If I want to run here manually, I have to go and change production. So next time it will be the production server. So this manually you have to check. Server will not tell you which one you want to run. Or there is a one more thing to identify. So if not here, if you want to identify your project, what is the project you are running, every project will have a bundle identifier. So you can pick this bundle identifier. Here what I'll do, if I give my bundle identifier this way, it is a development server. If I want to run in the production, I will change my bundle identifier to this. So some values you have to check manually, so then only we can identify which server you are running. But after picking the values, so now if it is a production server, the APIs will be totally different. For staging, we may use staging.app.com. For production, we may use production.app.com. So if I want to change that global URL, here I'll check what is the server I'm using. So the first step, I have to go here.
Yeah, suppose my staging points to some database and my
server point to different, correct. So here you update the URLs. In the switch case, I'll check now. It will identify which server. So here my server is a production. I'm printing my production server. Here you update the APIs. So it will be a global value only. What is the API taking? Also a global variable that you can update. So it will start working for the production.
So what the use of because that is calculated, right? Already we know that this much will be the case.
Okay. So if I don't have enum, so usually what I'll do, if I'll get a variable,
I may create one dictionary also on array also. Then I can add take switch case because that will be limited only. Not like that will be unlimited. Yes. So I'll be having stipulated number of cases.
Yes. So here I'm taking one more example. So my variable and I'm taking as a production. So if I want to change the values, so what I have to do? First I have to check if x is equal to production, update your values here. Now again I have to write else if. Every time I have to check x is equal to develop, and then I have to write one more else if stage. If not, again I have to write my else case. So instead of writing all this, so you may be missing something. So this switch case, if I'm writing, I don't need to check whether there is a spelling mistake. Okay, everything. Here what I'll do, I'll come to the case, do dot and escape. It will tell you what are the servers are there. So I can directly pick the value. There may be no case sensitive. So whatever the cases I'm defining here, the same cases will come for me. So it will be very useful in the real time. So people, they directly follow these things. Enumerations they'll follow. If in future I want to define one more, just go and define the case here. So directly I can go to the particular enumeration. If I want to check here, so I have to check this x variable. I want to access this x variable by checking this controller. But this enumeration I'm defining globally. If I want to access this in other class, directly using my enumeration name. What is the enumeration I'm having? Enumeration name, directly I can access this. But if I want to access this x variable to check the production, so this x variable is inside my class. First I have to create an instance for this class, then you have to access this x variable. So instead of writing all this, if I want to access in 4 different classes, I have to initialize this first, then I have to access this one. Instead of that, I have enumeration. So what are the class you want? You directly go to the class, check your server type, what kind of server you are running. If I want to write the switch case, I can directly write the switch case also. So these are the things that we go for the enumeration.
So in order to suppose I am having a blank script file.
Yes.
So I can start writing enumeration there.
Yes, yes, anywhere. So it is like, so here I am just telling in separate classes. This code you can write in anywhere in the application. So
what I mean to say, it should be I should be writing it inside a class or should be independent or global.
Yes, yes, correct. In a real time, they should use everything globally only. So here I am teaching the classes. The real time, what they do is they'll create a new file, empty Swift file. Here you go and define your enumeration. This you can access anywhere. But I cannot define the variable here. Always, if I want to define the variable, you define a class or a structure or enumeration, then define your variable. So these are the things that we will follow for the enumeration. Any other doubts in this? Okay. So the next thing.
So we can say Swift is a pure object-oriented language.
It's not a pure object-oriented. It's like a protocol-oriented language. So lot of the things which we cannot achieve using the objective hooks concept, that we can achieve using the protocol concept.
Yeah, there are certain things which are different from
Yes, yes, correct.
because there is array is like the collection of similar type of elements they place in a contextual concurrent memory location. And here in array I can declare any type.
Correct, correct. And that concept, once we see these basics, then we go for the first we'll see Wooks concept, and we'll see what are the drawbacks in the Wooks concept for Swift language. Then we will see for the POPs concept, protocol oriented programming concept.
But here pointer concept is there.
Oh no, no pointer.
I think objectives
In Objective-C, everything is a pointer concept. Here, so that is the thing. Whenever I'm defining a variable, I'm not pointing it anywhere. So pointer usually they'll put the star mark to point to the particular location and to fetch the value. Here we don't have any pointer. This one.
But most of the super classes, the library, they are coming from only NS. Like,
No. So that is NS is for Objective-C we were using. So NS is nothing but NS object is a root class. From the NS object, we will fetch one by one. So here also the root class is NS object, but we don't use any pointers here. So the next thing we have is a subscript. So where we use this subscript and what the use of. So first we were, as of now, we have used this in many places, but we don't know that we have used subscript. So in a class or in a structure or in a enumeration. So wherever you want, you can use this subscript syntax. So first, what is the syntax for this? Always we mention subscript by using the big brace open and a close. So where we have used this means in arrays concept, in a dictionary concept. When I want to access some value, when I want to fetch some key and value from the array, when I want to fetch some index. So usually what we have done, your array name and you tell the index value. So here index, where you are placing index, you are placing in the subscript only. The same way dictionary, if I want to fetch some value for the key you are placing inside my subscript only. So these are the basic subscript that is available in the Swift language. And if I want to define, I can define my own custom subscript also. So how I can define and what is the use of this? Suppose in a real time, I may need to do some small calculation. So when we want to execute calculation, most of the thing we are creating a function, nothing but a method. In this method, I'm doing the calculation, I'm getting the result. But if it is a small syntax, small case, small calculation, instead of writing one more separated method for this, give your subscript. So we can use my subscript and then fetch the value. So the syntax will be something like this. The keyword, so this subscript won't have any name here. So always whenever I want to define, I cannot define with a name. So the basic thing, you have to define the subscript and your parameters. I can define a parameters, or if I don't want to define a parameter, I can ignore the parameters. And must and should, there should be some return type. So always for the subscript, I have to give my return type, so only it will give the result. The result I can store it. And do your calculation what you want to do. This is how I can use the subscript. So where I can define this in a class or in a structure or in an enumeration, I can define this. So I want to define one subscript here. So always I have to use the same subscript keyword followed by your parameters. So here, if you want to define a parameter, you define or else ignore. I want to define two parameters, and then there should be always a return type. So you cannot ignore the return type. So here the return type is a mandatory. In a functions, return type is not mandatory, but here return type is a mandatory. So when there is a return type, always have to return the value. So in the functions also, wherever you are having the return type, always have to return the value. So return A into B. So what are the values I'm getting for this subscript? Whoever calling this subscript, they always have to pass A value and the B value. So what I'm doing, I'm just multiplying these two and giving the result to them. So how I can call this? I'll take a variable. So to call the subscript, always use the syntax. When you want to call big brace open and a close. So I want to call a subscript. So where I have defined this? I have defined in my class. So whenever I say self, it is nothing but it will represent my class. So in my class, so what kind of subscript I have defined? So it depends on what value you are passing. So I'm passing two integer values. So it will check. So here I can define in a class number of subscripts, but which subscript is accepting two integers. It will go and call the same subscript. So now I have two integers. This will accept two integers. It will go and call this one. And what is the result you are giving? It will store in this variable. So the same result will be stored here. What if I define one more subscript? I want to define one more subscript, and here also I want to pass two integer values. Always your compiler will say it is a duplicate subscript, because in this also you are passing two integers, in this also you are passing two integers. So it will always say you are passing a duplicate subscript, always remove this. So you are not allowed to pass a duplicate subscript here. So here if I want to remove this, I can remove this. So now it will allow, it is having one integer, it is having two integers. So this is a simple thing that we use when I want to do some small things, go for the subscript. Instead of for this, usually what we'll do, we'll write a function and we'll give a function name, giving the parameters, return type, all this. But instead of this, we have an inbuilt scenario called subscript. So using this, we can achieve this. And moreover, in interview, you may get a question like, so how you are accessing the index from the array? How I am accessing the index means by using my subscript. So the dictionary also the same concept. By using my subscript only, I am able to access. So this doesn't mean when you want to access some sequence, some list, some calculations. So all this, for this we have only one option called subscript. But in a real time, we may write a code for this, or we may not write a code, but definitely you will get this question about the subscript. And you may get asked to write the syntax for this. Always remember, it is nothing but function only. So function syntax will be something like this. Function will have function name.
While writing a subscript, we should mention the subscript keyword and no name is
no name. We cannot provide any name for this.
This is the difference between subscript and function.
No, in a function, return type is a optional. So in the function, if I want to write a return type, it is my optional. If I want to write it, I'll write it, or else I'll ignore. But in the subscript, we always have to return the result. If I remove this, I'm just writing subscript and the parameters. It will always expect to write your return type. So these are one more. Any other dots in this subscript concept?
We are using it.
No, it depends on our requirement. Basically, we may not use 80%. We may not use But when you have this kind of things, so for this kind of thing, in real time, don't ever go for the function. If one line calculation or two lines calculation, or I want to return some result, I want to check for one boolean variable, and I want to check whether he is a free user or a paid user. So for this, if I want to check, go for the subscript. But why people will not go for the subscript again in the real time means we have a computed properties. In the real time, when I want to do this kind of scenarios, or if I want to do this, I have a computed property, and there only I can store the variable also. But here I'm defining one subscript, one variable. Instead of two, I'll define what I'll do. I'll define one computed property here. Do your calculation here. Define your A variable, B variable, and define your calculation. But if I don't know the value, if I don't know A value, if I don't know B value, then go for this. Here I cannot pass A value, B value for the computed property. I should know the A value, I should know the B value, then only I go for it. So this kind of requirements you should be aware of. Then you will easily define. So what you want to go for? You want to go for the computed or you want to go for the subscript?
So I created one subscript in class A.
Yes.
In one script class.
Yes.
And I created another subscript in class B.
Yes.
But can I call it globally?
Yes. Yes.
But usually, suppose similar. Suppose I mentioned I created one subscript taking two integers and the return type is also
Integer.
and it gives me a star B.
Correct.
Then in class B also I mentioned.
Yeah, you can mention. So no, but when you are calling by your class name. If I'm calling here, I'm calling self. So it will call always this subscript. If I want to call class B subscript, instead of writing self here, I'll call class B, then the subscript. So it will make the difference. In the next concept, we have a generic functions. So basically, what is the use of generic functions? Why we use? When you want to optimize your code, when you want to reduce your code, or you want to reuse your code in all the scenarios. So we go for the generic functions. We say generic functions are the generics. First, we'll see one real example what we are using in a real time. First, what is the meaning of generic? A generic is something which will accept any kind of data type. So it should accept any kind of data type. It should not say I will accept only integer, I will accept only string, I will accept only another type. For first example, if I take array, in array I can define an integer array, I can define a string array, I can define a boolean array, I can define any kind of array. So here array is one thing which is accepting integers also, strings also, boolean also, double also, any kind of data type. In the real time, sorry, in the interviews, if you get a questions like generic collections, arrays and dictionaries are the generic collections. So when we discussed this topic, we discussed this topic as a collection types. Collection types are arrays and dictionaries, and the same thing we call as a generic collections also, because in array I can store any kind of data type. It will not say only store integer, string or something. In the dictionary also I can store any kind of data type. So these are the simple thing for the generic example. Then what is the generic function? First, we'll see one example. My requirement is to swap the two numbers. I want to swap two different numbers. So when you want to swap two numbers, I'll write a function. I want to swap two numbers, so I require two variables. One is integer, another one is integer. So when I call this function, I can pass two integers here. I'm calling two values. Here, if I want to pass a string, I cannot pass a string because the function I have declared for the integer here. Now, if I want to swap two strings, I want to pass two different strings. So again, I have to define one more function. So my variable should be defined with string and the string. But here, if you observe the functionality, what code here, right? The logic, what I implement here, the same logic should be implemented here also. So nothing but for the same logic, I'm defining two different functions because of data type. If future you may get a requirement for other data type, you may be getting for the double, you may be getting for the boolean. So this is a simple example. Swapping is a simple example. So in a real time, I have to optimize this code. So you'll get a chance to optimize this code. So your application memory will be less, performance will be high. Or I have to read the code. One thing is optimization. Or another one is code reusable. So what I'll do, I'll define my generic function here. How I'll define the generic function? The same thing, how I'm defining a function, define your function name. So here, usually what you are passing the data type here. Now in the generic function, you don't pass any data type. So instead of passing a data type, give some name for this. Because two are integers, I'm defining t and t. So this can be anything. This can be your name. What is the name that you want to provide? You can provide with any name. But how I will identify what data type I should pass? So here, put a placeholder. Syntax will be like this: function name, and in the braces, your placeholder you have to provide. This thing, whatever you are providing, we call it a placeholder. So then when you define a parameter, you define parameter data type as a placeholder. Then your logic. Now I am defining my placeholder should be t. So my function, so my data type I am defining as a t here. So t can be anything. It should accept anything. So in the real time, why we are defining with only one character? So it will be very easy to define with one character, and wherever you want to change, you can change. In a function, if I want to define multiple data types, you define t, u, v, because parameters always not will be the same data type. And write your logic to swap the two numbers. If I want to get the output, I want to get the same output, here write my output should be t. When I say t, when I want to pass t here, the t should be a single data type. So when I call this function, generic function, first time I can pass two integer values. When I want to call string, I can call the string. the generic function, now I'm able to pass an integer, I'm able to pass a string, I'm able to pass a boolean. So it is my wish. Whatever you want to pass, we can pass. But always it should be a single data type. If I pass 2, 3, 4 here, I can pass string here because T is the only one thing identify only one data type at a time. If there is a requirement, I want to pass two different data types. Here you give one more variable. So T will tell you one data type and U will tell you one data type. So here B, if you want to represent, you represent B with a U data type. Now I can pass two different data types. T will be 1, U will be 1 because I'm defining two different data types here. So this is how, this is the functions we call as a generic functions.
What's the return?
Return type is my wish. So if I want to write any return type, if I want to return the T, I can return the T. If I want to return the U, I will return the U. If I want to return the both T and U. So these are the things. So here there is no return type. I'll just comment this and I'm placing here because I'm not writing any logic to return this. Okay. So here what I have done, instead of writing all this code, the code is optimized already. The code is optimized into a single code and I can read the code. If I want to read this anywhere in a different class, I can call this same function to reuse my code also. This is the things we call as a generic functions. So the syntax I'll write there. If you get a question why we needed generic types, for this only one reason, optimization and reusability. And where we generic means, so we have a generic collections. In the generic collections, we using the arrays and dictionaries, and we say these are the generic collections. Any doubts in this generic function? Okay. The next thing, access controls. So basically, what is the meaning of access control? By default, my Swift language. What is the Swift language I'm having now? By default, it is a open language. So it is a global. Any class variable, by default, any class. If I have 3 classes, I can access this variable anywhere inside my project. This variable anywhere I can access inside the project. So how I will provide a security here? I want to restrict some variables to not to be accessed in the other classes. How I provide the security levels means by using my access controls, I will provide the security. In other languages, we have a public, private, protection, protected. Here we have a 5 different levels. One is a open, 2 is a public, internal, private, and the file private. So these are the 5 levels we provided. The first 2 things. So definitely you get a question from this. What is the difference between open and the public? The first 2 levels we use in the framework development, not in our project. The keywords open and public. If I go to my framework class, I can find these keywords anywhere. Now I want to go to my super class. My class The superclass for this is a UI view controller. If I go to this class in the framework defined as a open class. So here we can see so many things. So many places I can see the public keyword, I can see the open keyword, public is there, so public protocol is there. So many things. Enumeration defined as a public. So then what is the difference between open and public? If I want to define a framework, so my custom framework I am defining. A framework is nothing but collection of some classes. I can define a classes here. So now framework development is done. I come to my project. In a project, I have a file. This class I am importing from this framework. Okay. Now class I'm having, I imported a framework. In this class, I'm allowed to use all the classes, all the functions, everything defined from here. So when I'm allowed to do, when I'm not allowed, when these classes, what are the in the framework, these classes if I define with open keyword. So here if I see the class, I have an open keyword. Now in this class, what are the functions are there? In this class, I have so many things. I can use any these things anywhere, wherever I want. I can use all these things. So I am allowed to do this all the things. If I don't import the module, so the framework, what the framework I'm having. If I don't import also, I am allowed to use this. So the open, you don't need to import the framework. The only thing, no need to import any framework, then use your classes. But in the public, so these are the framework development only. So what are the these two keywords you are having for the framework development? In this, you don't need to import anything. Still I can use my classes, my functions. Here you have to use the import and the framework, then only you can access everything. This is the only difference that makes between the open and a public. If I see something, so here I have only a module called foundation module. I want to use one thing here. I am using one keyword called UI image. So immediately I'll get an error. You are using undeclared type UI image. Why I'm getting this error means I am not importing the framework called UI kit. If I import that framework, then my error will go. So when you are defining a framework, you can tell you want to give the access without importing the module, or you want to give access with importing the module. So these are the things that will make the difference. But in real time, if I'm writing a some code, I don't need to use any public keyword or any open keyword. So these are the things that are there. Then we have a internal access level. When I use internal access means what is the code as of now we have written. Everything is an internal access. This is the default access level. For this, I don't need to write any internal keyword. If I want to write an internal keyword, I can write internal keyword here, or else I can ignore. So if I want to write internal, if I don't internal also, it is the same access level. This thing is not required. Then I have a private, I have a file private. So what are the file I'm creating here? Here I have so many things in the left side. Everything is one file. Everything is one file. If I create a variable, suppose I have this variable. This variable I want to give access only to this file. What is the access control file is there? I want to give access to this only to this file. Why? Only to this file means in this file I can define number of classes. I want to give access to X variable in this class, this class, this structure. But these are also defined in my same file. So here, if I want to use this, now I'm able to access this. If I give, so by default it is internal, so I can access anywhere. If I give private here, when I give private in another class, this private is nothing but in which type you are defining. So the types we have class, structure, and enumeration. If I'm defining private here, this is up to this class only. If I'm defining some variable and I say private here, it is up to this structure. The same way it is up to this enum. I have a variable x and I made it as a private. So in this class, this is the class scope. In this, anywhere I can use this. This anywhere I can use this. So this kind of variables we call as a private variables. This is private for this class. Now, if I define variable here, so here I don't need to put a private here because I'm defining variable inside my function. When I define variable inside my function, it is private up to this function. Here, if I put a private keyword, so here by default it is a private keyword and no need to add extra argument called private here. So here you should know the difference between defining a variable inside a class or defining a variable inside the function. So here it will not give access to the other classes or the structures or the enumeration. Now if I make this as a file private, here I'll not get an error because this x variable whatever I'm having, this I can access in this file anywhere, in the access control file anywhere. But if I want to access this x variable in another class, suppose I have a generic functions here. So this is inaccessible. What are the x we have defined? It is inaccessible due to its access level. I have given the file private up to this class only. What are the class I'm having? Up to this file. Sorry, up to this file wherever I can access. If I remove this, it will become a global variable. So in a global variable, I can access anywhere inside my project. Here it won't give any errors. So here also I'm able to access in the different class. Now my class is generic functions. The variable I have defined in the access control. I can use this private up to the class, not to the other classes, up to this class. File private up to this file, not to the other files. So these are the three access levels in a real time that we follow: internal, private, This is up to the source file. So these are the three things that you should remember. Default access level is a internal access, and then you can restrict to the private or to the file private. Most probably in a real time, we may use private or a file private. This, if you write also not a problem. If you don't write also not a problem. In a real time, we don't write because whenever you're defining a variable, you don't need to write internal here.
You can write this access control.
Yes, it is not only up to the variables. If I want to restrict my function, I have this function. I want this function to be private here. Nothing but into this class. What is the class I'm having? Into this class. I can define into the private, and I can make file private. In this file, I can access this function anywhere. So these are the things that we have in access control. Any other dots are there in this? So open and public, if I want to define a framework, here we have a framework called so these are all the frameworks that we have inbuilt. So here we have a UAKit is one framework. So UAKit is one framework. Foundation is one framework. So first we'll see example for these two frameworks. I have two frameworks. Now, what are the code I'm writing here? Any code I can write from this module I'm getting, or from so instead of telling a framework, we call it a module here. So I have a foundation. So now, if I want to get some functionalities, what are there in the UAKit module? So in the UAKit, I have all these classes, and in the foundation, coding related concepts will be there. So array, dictionary, so all this will be defined here. If I need some functionality, I have a UI image that is defined. I have a UI image that is defined in my UIKit framework. Now I want to access this. When I want to access this, immediately I'll get error. You are not declared your model. So you did not import your model and you are trying to use this. So here, what I have to do, I have to import UIKit. Then only it will allow me. It is nothing but if this is defined with my public class, then only it will throw this kind of errors. What is the UA image class I'm having? If UA image class defined with my public keyword, then only it will throw error. First thing, you import me, then you use me. Now open is opposite to this. Open, what it will do? If I don't import this foundation kit, this integer, okay, we'll go to that foundation module. So in this model, somewhere it will be different. The integer, what is the integer I'm having? Integer is coming from the foundation framework. But still, in this, I am not importing any foundation framework. Still, I am able to access this. It is nothing but if the integer class, whatever I have defined, if I define with a open class, then I am able to access this. So these are the only differences that it will make between the public and open. It is nothing but framework. You can directly use open, public, but you should know the requirement. You want to give a access. It is a free access level. Open is always a free access level. Anywhere, anytime you can use this, but it is little restricted. You import me, then you use me. So then I'll allow all the access. So these are the things that we follow. So any other notes in this concept? We have a class, we have seen the class structure and enumeration, and we have seen the properties, we have seen the methods, subscripts. So these are the looks like very simple concepts. In the real time, we may use in a regularly. So in each day or in each class, each function, we may use according to the requirement all these concepts.